So, my final presentation then of the day, I guess is a little bit more light-hearted compared to my other three. So, I've had a bit more fun with this one, I guess, really. And I suppose to a certain degree, I'm playing devil's advocate as well, as you probably see in the first few slides. So, when it comes to Internet of Things, I guess I'm a little bit sceptical. And I think there's a lot of talk about IoT, and there's a lot of buzz about it, with actually very little substance behind it. And I was on a train many months ago now, and I saw a tweet from a lighting colleague, and I'm going to share it with you. And it made me laugh out loud, and I think the other people on the train thought I was a little balmy or something. But I'll share the tweet with you. And I guess that kind of depicted where I think we are with IoT technology, really. But it prompted me to look into this a little bit more, knowing that I had this slot in the LightBytes series to do. And it prompted me to look into IoT technology and maybe how it was affecting other markets and other sectors, etc. And I did a bit of research into the types of IoT devices that you can buy. Are you ready for this? So first of all, I found an IoT coffee maker. And I thought, well, you know what? Actually, that's not a bad call, really, is it? That you can switch your coffee maker on by your phone from the side of the bed. So when you get downstairs, your coffee's nice and ready and hot. I thought, well, you know what? A bit lazy, but okay, I get that. And then I found an IoT pillow that apparently tracks how well you sleep and communicates the results to your phone. Exactly what you want, all those signals going through your brain as you're trying to sleep at night. I then found an IoT egg tray. Oh, it gets better. An IoT fork. Something I really need. And this went on and on and on until I hit the thing that really struck, yes. Are you ready for this? It's a family show. I won't delve into what it does. But if you like statistics. And I think this kind of just sort of really reaffirmed my belief that just because you can doesn't always mean you should. And I kind of feel that with IoT technology, we've developed this technology where this thing can talk to this thing, and now we've got to find a reason why we want that to happen. But let's just sort of bring it back to lighting for a minute. Lighting and IoT. And I kind of feel that we're kind of at this stage, and really as an industry, we need to get our blimmin' act together with this. Because IoT is brilliant, but we've got to define what we want from IoT. You know, I have customers that come to me and say, oh, you've got a very nice light fitting. Yes, does it connect to the internet? Well, why do you want it to connect to the internet? Oh, I don't know, that's just what we do now, isn't it? And it kind of just makes my brain explode. You know, why do you want the light fitting to connect to the internet? What are the reasons you want it to connect to the internet? And no one can actually ever give me a decent answer. But there are, of course, areas where connectivity and transferring of information and data can be hugely beneficial. And one of those areas, I think, is maintenance, because maintenance is costly. Not necessarily in the components, drivers, batteries, LED boards, modules, whatever you want, they're not that expensive anymore. But that guy, whew, he's very expensive. You put him in a van and he becomes even more expensive. And this is where we can start to get, I think, a little bit cleverer with IoT technology to try and lower these maintenance costs. And I just want to run through some scenarios really to kind of set the scene. So let's take a situation where we have a mains luminaire that fails or is faulty. And let's say in this particular case that it's the driver that has failed. So what are the processes? What generally happens? Well, Doris, or somebody, rings up the maintenance man and says, my light stopped working. Okay, so what's the process? Well, first of all, somebody has to go out and look at that light fitting, investigate what's happened. And that's invariably a person. And of course, with that, there is a cost. Ka-ching! So the person goes out, finds it's the driver, but of course he hasn't got the spare with him. And he probably needs to go and order it as well. So that engineer would have to go away, order the parts, wait for it to come, comes in, and then has to go back and fit it. Visit number 2. Ka-ching! But now let's look at an emergency luminaire, because it gets even worse with an emergency luminaire. So similar situation, an emergency luminaire fails, somebody has to go and look at what's happened. Ka-ching! Order the parts, fit the parts. Ka-ching! But then it gets worse, because with an emergency luminaire, you then have to wait for it to recharge for 24 hours and then go back and test it for 3 hours to make sure that it operates correctly. Ka-ching! Gets even more expensive. So, wouldn't it be amazing if we could cut some of this out? Wouldn't it be amazing if you knew immediately when something had failed? Particularly in safety critical situations, for example. If you knew what had failed, where it had failed, and what the light fitting was, so you had a reasonable stab at being able to get access to the right parts. Well, the answer is we can do all of this and a lot more. And this is where IoT systems and connectivity systems are certainly helping. But the backbone to all of this is something called DALI. And we normally associate DALI with dimming and controls, don't we? A DALI ballast to be able to dim or address the luminaire or switch or set scenes. But what we don't necessarily associate DALI with is actually the status and feedback information that you can get from a DALI ballast or a DALI driver, such as lamp status, whether it's connected or in short circuit, control gear status, or battery status if it's an emergency luminaire. DALI allows us to feed back from the luminaire into a control system and understand what is going on with that light fitting. So DALI does a lot more than just allowing you to dim up and down a light fitting. And there's lots of different systems and different ways of working, but the general sort of core principles of these sorts of systems is that you'll have a DALI-enabled luminaire that connects either through wired connections or wireless connections to some sort of gateway, and that gateway then provides connection of the lighting and the building then to cloud servers and internet technology. And this is then where we can use web browsers, apps, whatever you want, to then be able to look at the status of the lighting in a building and understand what is going on. So let's just sort of go through these what, when, where kind of situations again. So the when. Systems can alert users or maintenance staff when a problem arises. And this can be particularly important with emergency lighting, because if an emergency product goes into a failure mode immediately after a monthly duration test, it could be then a month before the emergency light fitting is found to be failed. So during that period, you might actually have no emergency lighting from that particular product. But with an IoT type system, then you would know the minute that there is a problem with it. And as I've already mentioned, this information can be critical in safety critical applications. The rail sector, for example, then they take not only emergency lighting, but mains lighting very, very seriously. If a platform luminaire fails, then they consider that a safety critical situation. And of course, this information can not only be presented on websites and apps, but of course, it can also be through emails as well, emailing the maintenance teams or the users or whatever as to what's actually gone wrong. And just to sort of give an overview, there's a dashboard here where we have a number of emergency lights connected to a zone, and you can see there through that status bar that all bar one are okay, but there's a problem with one of those light fittings. So it becomes immediately obvious that there's an issue with that fitting. Let's deal with the what then. Well, again, using DALI feedback, systems can tell us what the fault is inside that light fitting. So for example, there is a lamp feedback. Is the lamp connected, or are the LED PCBs connected? Is it short circuit? Is it open circuit? What's going on with the actual light source? Control gear. Is the control gear there? Is it working? Is it communicating? Or is it in thermal shutdown? I was talking this morning about the importance of heat, ambient heat in the environment. A lot of drivers now have thermal shutdowns built into them. So if they get too hot, to prevent further damage to the luminaire, they will actually turn the luminaire off. So has actually the fitting gone into thermal shutdown rather than the light fitting actually failing? Emergency module failure, battery failure, or battery charging issues. All of this information can be brought back through DALI. But of course, also importantly, we need to understand if there's a communications failure as well. Has a luminaire stopped communicating with the system? That's just as important as well, because if it stops communicating and no one knows about it, then of course no one knows if there's a problem with that light fitting. So again, another example as to how that might look. We've got the communication at the top there. The DALI driver's talking to the luminaire, healthy status. The luminaire's talking to the gateway, healthy status. The communication is all working. We can see their lamp status, all healthy, all okay. Aha! There's the problem. It's the battery. So there's an issue with the battery in this particular luminaire. And of course, the knock-on result of that is that there's an issue with the function test that was carried out. So all of a sudden, we can now understand. It's all right, there's something popped up on the screen here that's not on there. Just let me try and get rid of this. Go to meeting, Bren. Where's he gone? Who's ringing in, Bren?
Sorry, I just need to nip out.
I think I've got rid of that now. Okay, so let's deal with the where then, because one of the other big problems is actually being able to find the faulty fitting in the building. And of course, we all know what it's like when you're trying to look around for a red and a green status LED indicator on an emergency light fitting, particularly if you've got a 10-story building, with many hundreds of luminaires inside it. So you kind of sort of turn into Inspector Clouseau a little bit. But with the facility where the IoT system is helping guide you to where the problem is, then of course you can reduce that time down. So IoT systems are also offering graphical interfaces that can indicate where in this building that failed luminaire actually is. So there's no more hunting around for where it actually is. So again, just to give an indication here as to how that might work, you can see there one of the luminaires is red, and therefore the maintenance engineer would know which floor to go to, where the room is, and where the luminaire is in that room to be able to fix it. So, although I was slightly sceptical of IoT systems to start with, you can probably see that actually there's a huge benefit to these, providing you know what you want from the system and what you want it to do. So by having this status and communication feedback information, we can significantly reduce maintenance costs through knowing what component has failed within the luminaire before an engineer actually goes to site. So they might be able to take the spares in the first visit, knowing where the failed luminaire is within the building, particularly if you've got a maintenance contract that might be, I don't know, for example, looking after a number of retailers or a number of schools or something like that. Being able to turn up on site, know exactly where the fixture is in the building can save an awful lot of time. And knowing what parts needed, so as I've said, being able to go to site with the right parts and the right spares in the first instance can save repeat visits. And of course, really, it's all about having to only visit the luminaire once. That's the part that can really make the savings. But also, with all of this enhanced information that's coming back, it also allows maintenance teams and maintenance managers to plan more effectively as well, to be able to do bulk changes or preempt when maintenance might be, particularly if it impacts on the processes or operations in a particular area. You can make a decision, right, I've had 10% failures in this area now, 10% of the batteries have started to go, let's shut this area down, let's change all of the batteries, and then let's get it open and back up and running again, particularly useful in manufacturing environments, for example. So, IoT technology, of course, is only going to improve and get better. Am I as cynical as I made out at the beginning? Of course I'm not. Thank you.